remember coming out of college. I'm thinking to myself, what in the world am I going to do? Because I have so many friends, and people think that when you go to college, you know exactly what you want to do. The said person is like my older brother. He knew he was going to be a lawyer since high school. He went to college to become a lawyer, a political science major. Then he went to law school. Me, not so much. Okay, not so much. So when I came out of school, I ended up in public relations. That was a fascinating job. Loved it, loved it. Navigated through education, still do it actually. And now I'm a podcast host and so on and so forth. So changing direction, uh, navigating your life, and you come through these life stages. It is an amazing journey. It is a chapter. Listen, gone are the days when gone are the days when we had to stay in one career in one place all the time. And so I am Ann Marie. This is about this life. And about this life, the heart and soul of it is sharing stories about people who made some shift, a mindset shift at that, Stacey. They've made some shift in their lives, and now they want to talk about it, and it makes an impact on our listeners. Hey, Stacey, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome sauce. So it's good to have you on the podcast on About This Life. And I understand you have made some shifts in your life. I mean,
Uh,
finance, mindset coach, fill in the dots. How do
Right.
we get from A to B?
Oh my goodness. I feel like when you're talking about, the decision you make when you go to college from high school, that you have no idea who you are as a person at all,
Check.
especially from my perspective. I didn't. And I went, I actually went to school for pharmacy. And so I only looked at two schools. I was going to be a pharmacist. And so I changed my major before I even went there. And so I ended up in the finance department. There was a moment in one of my classes actually where one of the professors said, well, you're all here because you want to be a CEO one day. And, she was talking about climbing the corporate ladder and how you get your way to the top. And it just, the way she was talking about it was very cutthroat, very like powerful, like, right? Like this definition of power. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not me. No. And that day, I went to the education school and transferred out, and I made my credits work for both. So I ended up with a dual major. And I felt at the time like I couldn't reconcile in my head that I could do something that made an impact and was really like good work and
Mm,
also
yeah.
make the income that I wanted. And so at the time, it was like, well, no, that's more important. How I feel and how something feels in my body is like the most important to me. And so I made the decision. I became a teacher. And then my first year of teaching, so I moved out of state to teach second grade. And then that first year on Christmas break, I went back home and met a friend out at the bar and met my now husband and talked to
Okay.
him all night. And it was just like such a good, like one of those moments of like, oh, I really like this guy. I feel so great talking to him, but like I live in South Carolina, he lives in Pennsylvania. Talk about a mindset shift. I was completely like, this is not possible. And he said, well, I guess I just have to come to South Carolina then. And so like
Oh
you
my
can see
goodness.
it's forming, right? And so I ended up moving back to Pennsylvania because both of our families were there. Um, at the time, so now I'm subbing because I left my full-time job. He was just starting a business. We were like, what are we doing? And I was pregnant with my daughter. So this was 12 years ago now. And I didn't get the full-time job that I wanted. And so
Mm,
I decided at that point that I would stay home, see how long I could stay home. I never saw myself as a stay-at-home parent. That was like not in the cards for me, in my opinion.
But you said
And
you were pregnant with twins.
no, just my first
No,
daughter. She
just the
was
one.
so
Okay.
12 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're like, okay, let's see if we can do it. By the time you go to work, sometimes you're ending up just paying for daycare. And it's like, that's not how I want our life to go if we can avoid it. So, like, let's see what happens. And through really just being home, I started taking photos, became a photographer, like, started taking photos of everything, pictures of my daughter.
Okay. So let's
Uh-huh.
stop for a moment.
Yeah.
Because I know I asked you to look, how did you go from
Fill in,
A
I
to B?
know. Thank you.
But you've said so much that I would love for you to unpack. Okay. So, Stacy,
Yeah.
for example, one of the things you said is you want to make an impact on people. Where did
Mhm.
that come from in terms of making an impact and having that desire?
That only came through the work I started doing because, so I'll give you the very short version. I became a photographer, really developed my career around boudoir photography for women, luxury photos, modern. I would say
Mhm.
to them, like, picture yourself on the cover of Vogue. This isn't for the male gaze in any way. And so I started doing that and then started coaching other photographers to build their business. And then through that, I realized, wait a second, there's something bigger here. And to go from someone who never thought they could make an impact to then realizing that I actually don't think I'm making a big enough impact yet. That
Mm.
was the moment for me that was like, okay, I have to follow this feeling. And so that's what brought me here.
Okay, so I'm hearing impact, and the impact is the common thread because you went from finance to education.
Mhm.
Stacy, let me tell you, there's so many of us who want to transition out of education. So you did the
Sure.
thing, you've navigated that world. But education is when you pour your heart and your soul into helping other people,
Hmm.
into helping the children and nurturing someone and planting those seeds.
Yeah.
So that's an impact.
Hmm.
Did you find it fulfilling or did you find it stressful? I mean, why go into
Mm.
education? Well, you sort of described that in terms of finance to education, but why leave education?
I think that it was a choice I made not because I was following my heart, because I always knew that, like, I had an interest in kids. Like, I loved being with them when I was younger. Like, that's what it was. And I truly did not know what I wanted to do. I had no idea. And so when I tried it, I loved my kids. I loved the relationship. And like, I remember I was subbing in a sixth grade classroom and like all the other teachers had problems with this one boy. And I was like, he is so funny. And so it was that connecting piece that I loved. I didn't love the lesson planning. I didn't love the extra work. I didn't love, and so my heart was not in it in the way it needs to be like the best version of a teacher, how I saw it. And actually, my husband was the one, he's been the catalyst for a lot of my growth. And then I took it and ran with it. But he said to me one day, are you sure you want to be a teacher? And I was like, what do you mean, am I sure? And I was snappy with him. I'm like, what do you mean, am I sure? I made this decision. I just went to school for this. Like, yes. And it was so closed when I think about like, I had such a fixed mindset. And I now see, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful, so thankful to like him, to me for believing in myself and like making these bold moves. And so once the idea was there, then I was like, then I'm the analyzer. I'm like, do I really like
Mm,
this? I don't know. And it just didn't, it
yeah.
felt like a lot of resistance.
There's some aspects of it that it's so rewarding when you
Yeah.
make that connection with children.
Mhm.
But I liken education is it's like an orchestra. You're a conductor and you have to make this piece, just on the different parts of the orchestra works. You have to make all of the pieces fit together. And it's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
Then, part of your life experience, part of your chapters, if you would, you mentioned a door being closed, in terms of you didn't get the job. So I
Mhm,
want you to speak life into that person because sometimes we have this, uh, as you said, fixed mindset. We
mhm,
think that, oh my God, that's my dream job and that is what I want.
mhm.
But you did not get the job. How did you pivot? How did you recoup from the idea, okay, this is what I was going for, but it didn't come through?
Yeah. It was really disappointing for sure. It was like, I think the principal at the time even said, I pray that we have a position available for you. And then I interviewed and I didn't get it. Like, ugh. And I do
Mm.
have a moment that I look back on where I I had such a small voice. I actually had no voice at the time. I was very shy as a kid, as a teacher, and I can see why I wasn't hired, but it was still disappointing. And that's really hard to say that I could see why I wasn't. But
For
again,
sure.
knowing that it was almost this relief. And now I think about this phrase, rejection is protection. And I
Mm.
know that I would not have made the decision for myself. I don't think I would have. I think I grew up in the way, whether I was like, whether it was something I just experienced, I don't remember it being like drilled into me, but it was this choice that I made this choice and I stick with it. And then I've learned so much about like my human design and I don't know what I think about that and like all these
Yeah.
things, right? And I'm like, oh, this makes sense.
Hmm.
Like this feels more free to me. This feels more of a positive thing about myself rather than a negative thing about myself. And so kind of tapping into this, like, okay, I can pivot then. I can like do something different. It felt very freeing.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that is very common for people is they used to believe, oh my God, my world is crushed.
Mm.
And they would have stuck with it. They would have said, okay, well, that job didn't come through, but I'm going to stay with education. But you leapt into
Yeah.
photography, just any photography, mind
Right.
you, boudoir photography. Spill the tea.
Yeah.
Because
That.
people, one of the things
Mm.
I used to believe, or I was taught to believe, is that that kind of photography, yeah, that's for those risque ladies and so on and so forth.
Right.
And it is completely the opposite. It's one of the most beautiful natural things, but I want to hear you talk about
Yeah.
it.
So it's funny when you say that. That's what I kind of thought of it too. And I saw a photographer who did something very different because I think a lot of, like, even within a small niche of boudoir photography, there are still separate niches in there. And so
Really?
when I said one thing, it was, there was like this preconceived notion with it that it was a certain way or a certain thing or for a certain person. And so I was in a really rural, small town. And I'm like, no, no, this is what I want to do. This is like what we're going
Yes.
for here. And I started to share through my social media and just like letting people know what the process was like, that it was so comfortable because I made it really
Mhm.
comfortable. It was like, leave your
Yes.
insecurities at the door, but I understand that they're here. And perhaps when that sentiment of like seeing yourself through someone else's eyes,
Hmm.
that's really
Hmm.
what it was. And it was like physical proof. And I would do a reveal with my client where we sat down and we look at their photos together. And sometimes they would say, no, I don't like that one. And I would challenge that. I would say, could you tell me why? Like, what is it about it? And then I see their insecurities softening. And like, it was deep, meaningful work that I didn't even know I was venturing into. I was not a
Yes.
deep person. I was
Yes.
drawn to it and I was like, this is beautiful. And I was really modest and really shy and really like sometimes I was like, how did I get here? Truly, how did I get here?
Mhm.
But I realized that I needed to build my confidence so much. And that's what I was doing, like alongside my clients. And it's this
You know,
really beautiful, like story in that.
It's story and I have experience with boudoir because I had my picture taken. And so for anyone who's listening, I want to say to them, go do it
Oh yeah.
because you mentioned being seen through someone else's eyes.
Mhm.
And that is true because that's the gift the photographer gives you.
Mhm.
But then that someone else becomes you
Mhm.
because when you're looking at the reveal and you see yourself
Yeah.
and you realize, I want to use the word sensual. There's nothing raunchy or raucous about it
Mhm.
at all. It's a very sensual, very, I'm in love with who I am. And it's freeing,
Yeah.
actually.
And I really
So,
use the word empowering too, because
yeah.
even sensual goes a little bit different than what I did, because
Hmm.
it was really like own your power, really. Like
Yes.
stop giving so much power to your insecurities. Stop giving so much power to worrying about how other people see you, and really like step into who you are and see yourself and then go lead with that.
And lead with that. And when you say step into your insecurities, that's a mindset type of shift.
Sure.
And you were, in fact, a mindset coach
Yeah.
because from all that experience, the shy introvert
Mhm.
who had
Mhm.
some doors closed in your life, who has this amazing husband. Oh, what a love story.
I
We can go
know.
down that
We
path.
could.
So kudos to hubby. Let's just shout
Yeah.
out hubby. Thank you,
Yep.
hubby, for being a catalyst
Truly.
for you.
Yeah.
Awesome sauce. But that
Mm.
mindset shift, and being a mindset coach, unpack that term for us. What does it mean to be a
Yeah.
mindset coach?
I have been unpacking the term for so long.
It's a process.
And right, it really is. And when I learned, when I was in a program to learn how to become an educator for photography, I joined a group program. I had no progress, none, zero. And I knew that it was 100% my responsibility that I didn't, because I had all the steps in front of me. And
Hmm.
I felt frozen and crippled to move forward because I doubted who I was. I doubted that I had anything to offer. I doubted that anybody would buy it. I doubted that, like, I
Yeah.
doubt, doubt, doubt. And instead of quitting, I joined this coach's inner circle. I paid more money. I got more accountability. I got
Right.
closer to people who were doing a lot more than I was doing. It was very vulnerable. And through all of that, though, I would see the people like me who you could kind of cast off as, oh, maybe they don't want it that badly. Or maybe, maybe they're just, I don't even know what it is. Like, I think that's what it comes to a lot. It's like the choice that you're making. And what I was experiencing was that I wanted it so badly, but I did not even realize all of that negativity that I had in my head subconsciously about myself, regardless of where it came from. My track was, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, over and over and
Hmm.
over.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I know a lot of people can relate to that.
A lot of people can relate, and
Mhm.
that imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so there were so many moments throughout my life that I could look back on. And I had the moment of, do you just want to quit? Do you just want to be done? And I would talk to my husband and he would say, Stacey, why don't you just be done? You have a great career as a photographer. Why don't you be done? And then once I was presented with that, I was like, nope, on I go. Like the desire really pulled me through. And then through all of that, I realized like, oh, these are actually limiting beliefs. This is my programming. And I am
Yes.
running on autopilot as all humans do because
Yes.
we want efficiency. We're wired to find efficiency. So we find shortcuts and our brain is so powerful, like so
Hmm.
powerful.
Hmm.
And I slowly over time and consistency and just like doing things that scared me, changing who I was being, I was able to do so much reprogramming that now
Absolutely.
I look back on myself and see a completely different person and in a fairly short time.
And how much you've grown.
Yeah.
Now, we use a lot of terms, and I'm in that world as
Hmm.
you are,
Yeah.
in terms of the mindset shifts and thinking about the insecurities and the rejection. Why is, and you're using words like programming. And so I wanted to just unpack it a little bit more for people. When you're inside, it's kind of like, well, let me give you this example. When you're a teacher, we use a lot of acronyms.
Yeah. Hmm.
And we teachers speak, and we
Yeah.
just assume everybody knows what we mean.
So true. Yeah.
But it's just like inside the industry, and so it is with mindset as well.
Hmm.
Because when we think of limiting beliefs, you've explained how you felt that I didn't feel good enough. Who's going to do this with me? That sort of thing. Speak a little bit about why why do we need to get over limiting beliefs? Why do we need to get pushed past rejection? Why do we need to push past insecurities? I mean, why not give up? Why not
Yeah.
stop? You
Hmm.
know? So speak to me as if I'm your client.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, talk to me
Mhm.
as if I'm your client. Why shouldn't I stop? Okay, I will never learn how to do this. Oh my goodness. I can't. I'm not going to be good enough. And that person over there is better than me.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
push me. Go ahead and push
You
me.
know, you know what's interesting too is that my my approach, because I am someone who's very calm, I'm such a good listener, and I learned about coaching, and really what it was like mentoring or consulting.
Yes.
And it was follow my steps, do it this way, this will lead to success. And people can have a dream and you can feel like, okay, I want this thing and I'm going to go after it. And then you're hit with this roadblock. And I now see it as it is merely a challenge to overcome. And
Okay.
if you stop there, that's okay, but you will not then, you will not get to the next step. That's a fact.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so when you think about your comfort zone, it was created because we want to be comfortable. That feels safe, but there's not growth in that. And some people are not wired for growth, and that is okay. But and I know that a lot of people can relate to this, it's like I have this dream, I have this desire, I do want more. And then you're hit with these things along the way that feel like proof that you should not. They
Right.
feel
Right. Right.
scary and they feel like I mean, for me, now I know the words like it was my nervous system was like going haywire because I was so scared and I had so much anxiety and like my palms were sweating with everything. And I'm like, ooh, I don't like that feeling. So I'll stop.
Right.
That was like my old self, my past self. And what I now realize is that is changeable.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
that is so cool to me. I just
Yes.
think it's like when we look at life and we look at the bigger meaning, and if you kind of like really zoom out a little bit and look at this, like picture us and what we're doing, to me, I am someone who looks around at my life now, and I wasn't always like this, but I'm someone who looks around at my life and I see, is there room for improvement here? And if there is room for improvement, I will go after that improvement.
Yes.
And that's just what I desire. And there will be things that feel uncomfortable along the way.
Mhm.
that want to shut you down for whatever reason, but then you get to decide, oh, this is my brain protecting me. This is just something that I have to navigate. This is just a challenge that I have to get over. And if I continue to put myself in these situations, just like a muscle gets stronger when you work it, I will slowly change who I am and therefore what I'm able to accomplish. And that feels like
Absolutely.
inspiring and like, oh my gosh. It's
Absolutely.
like, do we all
Look,
know? Do we all
sold,
know that this can happen? Right?
sold. You had me on the edge of my seat,
Yeah.
sold, because
Oh, thank you.
there's one thing that you said, especially that resonates with me. There's a tension between safety
Mhm.
and growth.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
where we are all going to encounter roadblocks and obstacles. The
Mhm.
thing about if we stay in our safety, we won't ever reach our dream. We
Mhm.
won't ever be here to experience the other side. It's sort of like climbing a mountain. Here I go with my analogies
Yeah.
again. It's like you're
I
climbing a
love them.
mountain and you go up the mountain. It's like it's a mountain. It's tough, it's rough,
Mhm.
but you've got to get through to the other side
Mhm.
because on the other side is where your joy is. On the
Mhm.
other side is where your dream is.
Yeah.
On the other side is where you realize something about yourself that you never knew was possible. So
Yeah.
I actually see the connection between being a boudoir photographer and being a mindset coach.
Yeah.
You know, they're both like revelations in that. So, one more term that we can unpack. You mentioned limiting beliefs and programming. So, help our audience to
Mhm.
understand those two terms. What exactly do they mean?
Yeah. So if you think about how think about like how you back out of your driveway or how you pull out of
Mm-hmm.
your driveway, how you're driving a
Mm-hmm.
car. It's like everything is automatic. If you had to stop and think about, okay, I push the brake, I do this, I like go through every step, it would be such a slow process every time. So everything gets faster and faster. Because of that, we all walk around our lives kind of on autopilot, and we have a belief that runs every decision that we make. And
Yes.
it happens so quickly that we are not even aware of it. And if you can say the statement like I want to do X, whether that's I want to move or I want to start a new job or I want to quit my job, but and then you give all the excuses and they're legitimate, they feel so real, they feel
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
Those are your limiting beliefs. Those are the beliefs that are running the show, basically. Saying the things like, well, I can't do that. I don't even know where I would start. I can't go get a new job. Have you seen like nobody can get a job right now? All of those things.
Right.
And then
Right.
each of those beliefs, they become your norm. You accept them as truth. And you say, yeah, gosh, why would I go get a new job? I mean, of course, like look at all these really bad things. And
Mm-hmm.
we as humans are wired for negativity to keep us safe. It all like so many things come back to
Yeah.
that. And so if you think about this belief, however like high it is, however big that dream allows you to be, that's where you'll stay. And so if something you want to reach this new limit, this new level, and you have beliefs that support you down here, we have to rewire those. We have to change those. We have to start really kind of like hyping yourself up and looking for
Right.
different types of truth. So maybe we can say something like, there are so many jobs out there. I just need to find the right one for me. And
Yes.
that feels like calming. It feels like, okay, we can do this. And not everyone can do this for themselves because it feels very scary. And that's true. It feels very scary. But when you have someone with you to recognize those things, and when you have awareness, and when, I do a lot of my processing through journaling because my brain has been like so fast that like
Yes.
I just think, well, no, that would be too hard. That would be too hard. That would never happen. And so with journaling, I slow it down and I realize what the things really are that are running the show. And then I can challenge those, I can change them. And then I think about like really increasing my limit for success. I'm ready for a new level because I've wired my brain to accept that I'm ready for this new level.
Increasing my limit for success. I like that line.
Yeah, thank
You
you.
are increasing my limit
Mhm.
for success. And it's best to do it with a coach, someone who can walk
Yeah.
through. Because I
Mhm.
have to tell you, with limiting beliefs, it's not something I would recommend doing on your own. Because if you do it on your own, the belief system that's limiting you is feeding what you think.
So true.
So you
Yeah.
need someone to unravel the beliefs, to pull the thread out and to push you and challenge you so that we are outside our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I imagine the body reaches a different level of homeostasis, a different level, because if the body's trying to protect itself
Mhm.
and stay within a level, but if you push the body, it adapts and it up levels. It
Yes.
levels up.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, we're okay here. You're
Yeah.
like, this actually feels okay. And for some people, they can jump in, they can go big, and they're good with it. I had to take a really slow approach, or otherwise I kept like hitting too big of a roadblock.
Hmm.
That was another thing for me. And then I think the other thing you said was programming, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The way it is funny, like how quickly you adapt to terms, even, right? And
Yes.
I worked with a client who had a lot of religious trauma. And she had already worked through a lot of it through therapy. And when I met her, she said, I really don't feel safe to make money as an entrepreneur because I've had all of this trauma and all of this evidence that showed
Hmm.
it wasn't safe to make money for me because of this situation I was in.
Right.
And so what I said to her with programming and what, coaches use as the term affirmations, when you have something new to focus on and you start repeating that thought, this can become your new thought. And you think about like new, I guess what people always talk about, like these, these neural pathways that you can like
Yes.
create new ones, right? And so to me, I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. I'm not like in my brain a lot, so I don't know what that's like. And it's really like digging this new channel. And what I said to her was, if we think about the negative term of something like programming, we think of brainwashing. We all can
Hmm.
kind of relate to that term. She could relate to that term with the trauma she had been through. And so I said to her, all of that was like repeated to you over and over and over, and you actually started to believe it. And you lived your life differently because you believed it. That programming, that brainwashing can be positive and it can come from you. So if your voice, you are the one that you spend the most time with, if your voice is positive and it's wired for growth, and you create this new programming or this new positive brainwashing through repeating statements and using these affirmations or mantras, that to me is a really like practical, real world way of looking at it because we can relate to that. We can know that, oh, yeah, that's unfortunately, that is a real thing that happens in the world. And we can also use it and use the power of that tool for something really good and something really beneficial to us and to others.
Yes. Absolutely. And I like the idea of affirmations because we use it so carelessly and frequently. Um, and oftentimes, like if I go online, I'll see an affirmation and I'll read it and I say, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And how many affirmations in our daily lives we go through
Mhm.
and we read, but we don't absorb. And
Yes.
so affirmations, in a way, is an opportunity to absorb. but it needs something around it in
Mhm.
order to change the belief system, to
Yeah.
move from, oh, that's just a nice saying, to, okay, what belief system is this affirmation challenging me with?
Yeah.
And that's why we need a coach. By
Mhm.
the way, so I can toot your horn, Stacy, it's also the difference between traditional therapy, talk therapy, and not saying anything is wrong with talk therapy. We
Mm.
love you. We love our psychologists and our psychiatrists, but it's a different pathway. Coaching is than it
Mhm.
is. Coaching is much different than the traditional therapy. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people might use the words interchangeably, and you've brought out a very clear distinction and the
Mm.
differences between the two. So, talk to us, talk to us about how people reach you and how, if somebody wants you to be their coach,
Oh,
how does
yeah.
that work?
Yeah, for sure. So I know that coaching has kind of a negative connotation in a lot of circles. I've seen it and I hear it. And what I also know is that I've entered into a lot of containers. I've gotten sold into things that weren't the right fit for me. And that made me feel bad about myself rather than like I didn't know it until I got on the inside. And I say that to like, I guess really let you know how I work is that I want someone to experience coaching with me first. And so I offer a completely complimentary coaching session for anyone who would like it. And the
Hmm.
wild part of that is there are so many people who don't take me up on that because
Right,
they're nervous and because it feels uncomfortable and they don't know what they may uncover. They don't know if they even need it. And so I've always been someone who knows that it's never about the money, but people make it about the money. And
right.
so I have removed any barrier of money and I let you experience a full coaching session with me. And so that's the best way because then at the end of that, you either feel complete and that I've helped you in some way, you realize that we're not a fit, or we can talk about working together more. And I have found that it has like allowed me to just really authentically be service led. And then that is my ripple in the world, regardless of
Yes,
whether they create clients or not. And
yes.
so that's what I have to offer. My website is just stacymusgrave.com. I'm on Instagram a lot and I have that complimentary session that I just think it can be so powerful what we can do in 90 minutes. The beliefs we can get over, if it's money mindset, if it's imposter syndrome, I will be there to deeply listen to what someone has going on and see if I can help.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I appreciate your demystifying the whole experience and the whole
Yeah.
idea
Thank you.
about it. And I would say that there's beauty and there's self-discovery in
Mm,
terms of becoming your authentic self
yeah.
through coaching. So, my closing question to you then is, how would you answer this? How would you fill in the words?
Mm.
I used to believe, but now I believe. So finish that sentence. I used to believe, but now I believe.
I used to believe that not much was possible.
Mhm.
And now I believe that nearly anything is impossible, is possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Not much is possible, but now anything can be possible.
Yeah. That one got me.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying.
I do. I do. I do.
Yeah.
It's a your mindset has shifted. So,
Totally.
Stacy Musgrave, thank you for being a guest on
Oh, thank
About This
you.
Life. And I am Ann Marie, the host. And listeners, viewers, you can find me on YouTube, About This Life, podbean.com, podbean.com, and I'm on all streaming channels. My gift to the world is to say that we are changing our lives one day at a time. And so it has indeed been a pleasure to have Stacy on to talk about how you can change your life. So thank you for joining, and I hope you will. I just want to encourage everybody two things. Boudoir. I'm coming back to that. Boudoir. Explore that. Explore that. Explore that. Give that gift to yourself, whether it's your next birthday or just celebrating yourself. It doesn't even have to be a special occasion. Give that gift to yourself because there are things that come out from that. And then explore the idea of coaching because coaching, as we've stated, is much different than regular therapy. And you just might find your dreams coming true. So, Ann Marie signing off about this life, changing our lives one day at a time.